Hello everyone. Till now, we've discussed the basics of Java. From now on, we're going to step into the data structures part. So today, we'll discuss about arrays. I've divided this topic arrays into two parts, which are one-dimensional array and the multi-dimensional array. So in this video, we're going to discuss about 1D array. So let's get started. Before we dive into arrays, we'll first understand what array means. An array is a data structure that contains a group of elements. So in a single variable, we are storing multiple elements. Till now what we have seen, we create a variable and we store a single value in that. But in an array, we create a single variable but store multiple values in that. So that is what an array is. Like before we might have seen int age equals 10 or something like that, where we only store a single value, but in array we can store multiple values in that single variable. So that is what basically array means here. Arrays are commonly used in computer to organize data so that related set of values can be stored or searched. For example, if we have to store all the roll numbers of students in a particular class, it is very easy to store them in arrays so that we can search for that particular value very fastly. If we store them in different variables, it will be a very tedious task to search. So arrays are basically formed to organize data in a very good manner. For example, if you have to store data of some cars, look at these cars. Look at this. Some car brands which are rarely heard of. I was actually going through a blog. I had actually gone through a blog where I've seen all these names. I actually love to know about cars much. So after looking at all these names, I literally didn't knew any name. I never heard of these names. If you have heard of these names before, please do comment in the comment section. So if you have to store all these names, it is better to store them in an array rather than storing them in separate variables. In an array, we can store all the primitive and non-primitive types of data. We can store int, float, long, char, and we can even store boolean data. Whatever, primitive and non-primitive, all those things we can store. But in Java, we can only store single data type in an array. For example, if you have to store roll numbers, you can only store if you have to store some integer value, you can only store all the integer values. You cannot store integer value and character value like we can do that in Python, but in Java we cannot do that. We can only store data of single data type. Like if you have to store integer, you can only store all integers. If you have to store character, you can only store all character. But you cannot mix integers and characters and store them. So array declaration. How to declare an array in Java? We can do it in two types. We can either write the array name and new data. For example, if you have to store roll number, you can write roll number equals new int. In that bracket, the number of values you want to store in that particular array. Or you can use the below form where we write the data type first and then the array name. The both formats are valid. So we will look at how to do this on our Eclipse IDE. So let's check out how to initialize an array. For example, if you want to store some roll numbers of some students, so for that, int, and then create a variable roll equals new int, and here we're gonna the roll numbers are stored in integer data type, so we're using int here, and this is to mention that it is an array. Roll is the variable, then new int, and then here we'll mention how many values are we going to store in that particular array. For example, if you have to store 10 values, we're going to put it as 10. If you want to store 5 values, we'll put it as 5. So this is how we initialize an array. Now we will look visually how this looks like. We'll have a visual representation of how this works. This is the visual representation of an array where the indexing starts from 0 and it goes on till n minus 1. If the length of the array is n, if we have to access any array, we have to mention n minus 1 in order to access the array. Regarding the accessing of arrays, we'll talk it after this, just after a moment. So the values in an array are stored in contiguous manner. So what does contiguous mean? Contiguous is stored one after another. For example, if you look at this 88, 19, 46, they're all stored in this order. They're not jumbled and stored. So in order to access something, it is very easy in an array. So we will see how to access an element in an array. First of all, let's create a variable, an array in age equals new, and for example, let's say we store 5 values in this. We've created this. Now in order to print out a particular value, we need to mention the index of that value. So sysout will take age 3. Okay. Now let's see what it shows. It is showing 0. So in the before visual representation which you've seen, there are some values which are mentioned in that. So if we just create an array and if we print out some value, the initial value would be 0, and if we mention if we specify any value in that array, then it is gonna show up that value, or else the by default value of an array is 0. So we will create another array. Int age equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've created this array. Now if I say sysout age 2, see, it has printed out 3 here. So in the while we in the before thing, we have seen how to initialize an array, but when we mention some values in an array, we simply write it in this form so that the length of the array would be decided by itself. The before thing was just to give an understanding of array, but generally when we have to give a when we have to write an array, we use this form. Now let's see how we can change the value in an array if we write some value by mistake. So let's create an array first. Int let's say age equals, we'll put some values in it like 2, 5, 6, 8, 2, 90, 100. We've kept some values here. Now if I say sysout age, for example, if I want to print the value of 6, as we know that the indexing will start from 0, so 0, 1, 2. So let's print out age 2. Let's run this program. It is printed 6 here. Now I want to change the value of the 6 to 12. So what I can simply do is, I can simply write age and its value age 2 equals, let's change it to some 100. Age 2 equals 100. So I wrote age 2 equals 100. So what it does is it is gonna change the value of this one to 100. Now we'll print this. Let's see. It has printed 100. So this is how we can change a value in an array. Right now we've seen how to get the value of a particular element in an array. But what do we do if we have to get all the values? For that, we use the for loop. So first of all, let's create an array. In age equals, we'll put some random values in this array, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 98, whatever. Now, if we have to access an element, we normally write sysout and then age, and we specify which element we want. So as the indexing is from 0, for example, if I want the element 5, what I would do, 0, 1, 2, I would mention 2 here, and I would print this out. This is how we normally do it. But what if I want to print all these values? For that, if I write sysout statements, if I write how many ever elements are there, if I write those many sysout statements, that would be a very tedious task. So simply we can write the for loop here in this case. For int I equals 0, I less than age dot length I plus plus. Sysout age I. I'll explain the code once. As you can see here, if all the values got printed. So what happened? What this dot length does is, age dot length would check the number of values present inside an array. So here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 values here. So age dot length is simply I less than 7. I equals 0, I less than 7, I plus plus, and then we are printing out age I. So instead of this I, it is gonna print age 0, age 1, age 2, age 3, age 4 until 7. So all the values present inside the array would get printed here. So this is how we could print all the values using for loop.
In this video, we've understood what array means and we've understood the one-dimensional array part. In the next video, we'll get to know about the multi-dimensional array. If you have any suggestions or queries regarding this video, please do ping me on my Instagram handle or comment in the comment section below. Thank you everyone for watching this video. Please do like, share and subscribe to my channel. We'll meet you in the next one.